March 14th, 1943, 8:23 in the morning, 12,000 feet above the Bismarck Sea, Papua New Guinea. Lieutenant James "Jim" Calloway banked his P-38 Lightning away from the fight. Behind him, 7 Mitsubishi A6M Zeros swarmed after him like hornets. His wingman was already spinning toward the ocean, trailing smoke. The squadron leader was screaming into the radio for everyone to tighten up, to stay in the fight, to stop running. Calloway ignored him. He kept his throttles forward and his nose pointed away from the combat zone, climbing at a shallow angle toward the northeast. To every pilot watching, Allied and Japanese, it looked like exactly what it was supposed to look like: a scared rookie breaking formation and running for his life. The Zeros followed. Of course they followed. Running fighters were easy kills, standard doctrine. Chase them down, close the distance, hammer them with cannon fire before they could regroup. The Japanese pilots had done this 100 times before. But Calloway wasn't running. He was counting. Altitude, airspeed, distance from the fight, the angle of the sun behind him, the temperature at this altitude that would affect engine performance and turn radius. He was dragging 7 enemy fighters into a very specific envelope of physics where the P-38's weaknesses became advantages and the Zero's strengths became liabilities. The lead Zero closed to 800 yards, then 600. Its pilot must have been grinning. An American running scared was already as good as dead. Then Calloway did something that should have been suicide. At 12,700 feet, with the Zeros committed and closing fast, he hauled back on the yoke, cut his throttles for 1 second, then slammed them forward again. The Lightning's twin engines roared. The aircraft didn't turn, it reversed in place, rotating on its axis like a turret. What had been a chase was now a head-on engagement. The Zeros scattered, their tight formation exploding into chaos. They tried to turn, tried to dive, tried to do anything except fly straight into the guns of a P-38 that was now pointing directly at them. Calloway's 4 50 caliber machine guns and single 20mm cannon opened fire. The range was 300 yards and closing. The first Zero disintegrated in mid-air. The second took rounds through its engine and rolled inverted, trailing flame. The third pulled up hard but stalled at this altitude, hanging motionless for half a second before it started to fall. In less than 4 seconds, 3 Zeros were dead. The remaining 4 broke in every direction, abandoning the attack, abandoning coordination, abandoning everything except the primal instinct to survive. Calloway picked off a 4th as it tried to dive away. Then he let the others go. He didn't chase. Chasing was how you died. He turned back toward the combat zone, where the rest of his squadron was still tangled with the remaining Japanese fighters. This is the story of how one pilot's suicidal reversal tactic saved an entire squadron and changed the way the Pacific Air War was fought. James Calloway was 23 years old. He'd grown up on a cattle ranch outside Cody, Wyoming, where winter storms could trap you for days and mechanical failures could kill you if you weren't smart enough to fix them yourself. His father had taught him to think 3 steps ahead, not just about what was happening now, but what would happen next if you made this choice or that one. When Jim joined the Army Air Forces in 1941, he brought that branch-bred pragmatism with him. He learned to fly in Arizona, transitioned to P-38s in California, and shipped out to the Southwest Pacific in January 1943. He was assigned to the 39th Fighter Squadron, part of the 35th Fighter Group, flying out of Port Moresby. By March 1943, the air war over New Guinea had become a meat grinder. American P-38s, P-39s, and P-40s were facing off against Japanese Zeros, and the kill ratios were brutal. For every 3 American fighters lost, the Japanese lost maybe 1, sometimes 2. The problem wasn't courage. American pilots had plenty of that. The problem was doctrine. The official word from command was simple: maintain formation, stay tight, use superior firepower to overwhelm the enemy, Never break formation, never chase, never run. If you got separated, rejoin the formation as fast as possible. It sounded good on paper. In practice, it was getting people killed. The Zero was lighter, more maneuverable, and could turn inside anything the Americans flew. In a tight-turning dogfight, the Zero won almost every time. American pilots who followed doctrine, who stayed in formation and tried to outturn the Zeros, died. The ones who survived were usually the ones who broke the rules, who dove away or ran for cloud cover, and then got court-martialed or reassigned for cowardice. The official line from higher-ups was that American pilots just needed better training, better discipline, better adherence to formation tactics. If you died, it was because you made a mistake. If you survived by breaking formation, you were a coward who got lucky. Calloway knew that was bullshit. He'd seen too many good pilots die following orders. He'd watched the wreckage of P-38s tumble into the jungle because someone tried to outturn a Zero at 8,000 feet. He'd listened to the radio as wingmen called for help that never came because everyone was locked in individual dogfights with no energy, no altitude, and no way out. There had to be a better way. The P-38 was faster than the Zero. It had heavier guns. It could dive better. But none of that mattered if you were locked in a turning fight at medium altitude where the Zero could just bleed your energy away and pick you apart. Calloway started thinking about the ranch again, about how you dealt with predators. You didn't fight a wolf pack head-on. You didn't stand your ground and hope your strength would win. You made the wolf commit to bad ground, and then you used the terrain to turn the tables. Maybe, he thought, you could do the same thing in the air.
February 29, 1943, Lieutenant Danny Morrison died over Leh. He was 21 years old, from Sacramento, California. He'd been in theater for 6 weeks. Morrison's P-38 had been jumped by 4 Zeros at 9,000 feet. He did exactly what doctrine said. He stayed with his wingman, tried to maintain formation, tried to use coordinated fire to drive the Zeros off. It didn't work. The Zeros split him and his wingman apart in less than 30 seconds. Morrison tried to turn with them. His Lightning shuddered, lost airspeed, and fell into a stall. A Zero put a 20mm cannon shell through his cockpit. His plane rolled inverted and went straight into the ocean. His wingman, Lieutenant Carl Dressler, broke formation and dove for the deck. He survived. He also got chewed out by the squadron commander for abandoning Morrison and leaving him to die alone. Dressler didn't fly again for a week. When he did, he was quieter, harder. He stopped trusting the doctrine. February 28, 1943. Captain Frank Hoskins and Lieutenant Pete Valdez died escorting B-17s to Rabaul. Hoskins was 26, a veteran with 12 missions. Valdez was 19, fresh from flight school on his 3rd mission. 8 Zeros bounced them at 14,000 feet, coming out of the sun. Hoskins tried to maintain formation and fight them off with mutual support. The Zeros ignored the formation and went straight for Valdez, the weakest link. They hit him with multiple passes, shredding his right engine and punching holes through his wing. Valdez tried to dive away. His damaged P-38 couldn't take the stress. The wing folded at 11,000 feet. Hoskins tried to chase the Zeros off, but they turned inside him every time. He was faster, but he couldn't bring his guns to bear. Finally, a Zero got on his tail and stayed there. Hoskins radioed that he was hit, that his hydraulics were gone, that he couldn't control the plane. His Lightning went into a flat spin and hit the jungle canopy at 200 miles per hour. No parachute. The squadron commander called it bad luck. Calloway called it bad tactics. March 7, 1943. Lieutenant Bill Kramer and Second Lieutenant Joe Fisk died defending a C-47 transport making an emergency landing at Dobodora. Kramer was 24, from Chicago. Fisk was 22, from rural Montana, and he reminded Calloway of the ranch hands back home. tough, quiet, competent. 6 Zeros attacked the transport just as it was touching down. Kramer and Fisk were the only fighters in the area. They engaged immediately, trying to draw the Zeros away from the defenseless transport. It worked. The Zeros ignored the transport and went after the 2 P-38s instead. Kramer and Fisk fought for 6 minutes. They followed doctrine, mutual support, coordinated turns, overlapping fields of fire. But there were 6 Zeros and 2 P-38s, and in a turning fight at 6,000 feet, the math didn't work. The Zeros chewed them apart piece by piece. Kramer's plane caught fire first. He bailed out at 3,000 feet, but his parachute didn't open. Fisk lasted another 2 minutes before a Zero got a deflection shot into his cockpit. His plane rolled over and went straight into the ground. The transport landed safely. 14 men survived because Kramer and Fisk died. The squadron called them heroes. Calloway thought they shouldn't have had to die at all. He started flying with a notebook strapped to his knee. After every mission, he wrote down what happened: altitudes, speeds, fuel states, angles of attack, how the Zeros maneuvered, how the P-38s responded. He filled 2 notebooks in 3 weeks. Patterns started to emerge. The Zeros always won turning fights below 10,000 feet. Always. The air was denser. Their lighter airframe and lower wing loading gave them better turn performance, and they could pull tighter without stalling. But above 12,000 feet, something changed. The thin air affected the Zero's engine performance more than the P-38's turbocharged engines. The Zero's turn radius got wider. The P-38 could sustain higher speeds at altitude. And if you could get the Zero to commit to a high-speed chase at altitude, you could reverse on them faster than they could react. The problem was getting them to commit. No experienced Zero pilot was going to follow a P-38 into a high-altitude stern chase unless they thought it was a sure kill, unless they thought the P-38 was running. Calloway started thinking about how to make them think that.
The idea came to him on March 10th, after a mission where he'd barely made it back alive. He'd been jumped by 3 Zeros at 11,000 feet, and instead of turning to fight, he'd pushed his throttles forward and climbed. The Zeros followed, assuming he was running. At 13,000 feet, Calloway had started to pull away. The P-38's turbocharged engines gave him an edge up here. The Zeros gave up and turned back. That's when Calloway realized something. The Zeros had been committed. They'd been chasing hard, burning energy, climbing aggressively to catch him. If he'd reversed right then, when they were at the top of their climb and slowest, when they were extended and committed, they would have been sitting ducks. But the reversal would have required something that violated every instinct and every bit of training he'd received. He would have had to slow down first. Counterintuitive, dangerous, against doctrine. The P-38's twin-engine design gave it one advantage that no single-engine fighter had. It could reverse faster in a controlled maneuver because the torque from the engines could be used asymmetrically. If you cut the throttle on one engine and maxed the other while hauling back on the yoke, the P-38 could rotate almost in place at low speeds without stalling. But it had to be done at exactly the right moment, when the pursuing fighters were committed, when they were slow from climbing, when they were too close to break off but too far to shoot effectively. Miss that window by 2 seconds either way and you were dead. Calloway started testing the maneuver solo, away from the combat zones. He flew up to 15,000 feet, built up speed, then practiced the reversal sequence over and over. Cut left throttle to idle, max right throttle, pull back hard, keep the nose from dropping, feel the aircraft rotate, feel the moment when it transitioned from running to attacking. Time it. 1,200 feet of altitude loss, 4 seconds from reversal initiation to guns ready,
minimum airspeed of 170 miles per hour, or the whole thing became an uncontrolled stall. He didn't tell anyone what he was doing. Practicing solo maneuvers without authorization was against regulations. Deliberately slowing down your aircraft in a combat zone to bait enemy fighters would get you grounded or worse. But on March 12th, Callaway decided he was done watching people die because of bad doctrine. He flew a patrol mission that morning with a new wingman, a kid named Eddie Larson, fresh from the States, 20 years old. Callaway briefed him before takeoff. "If we get bounced and I break away, don't follow me. Stay with the formation." Larson looked confused. "You're not supposed to break away." "I know," said Callaway, "but if I do, don't follow me. You'll get yourself killed." Larson didn't like it, but he nodded. They launched at 6:40 in the morning, 6 P-38s escorting 3 B-25 bombers hitting a supply depot near Finschhofen. The mission was routine until 8:15, when 6 Zeros came down out of the clouds at 16,000 feet, slashing straight through the formation. Callaway's section took the brunt of the attack. Larson's plane took hits in the left engine. Callaway called for him to dive out and head for home. Larson broke away, trailing smoke. 2 Zeros followed him. Callaway made his choice. He broke formation, turned away from the fight, and climbed northeast at full throttle. The 2 Zeros pursuing Larson saw an easier target and switched to Callaway instead, a single P-38, running alone. They took the bait.
Callaway kept his eyes on his instruments and his mirrors. Airspeed, 290 miles per hour. Altitude, 13,000 feet. Distance to the Zeros, 1,000 yards in closing. Sun angle, behind him, 40 degrees up. Perfect. He climbed at a shallow angle, letting the Zeros close the gap without making it obvious he was controlling the engagement. They needed to think they were winning. They needed to commit fully to the chase, burning energy to catch him, climbing hard, getting slow. At 13,800 feet, the lead Zero opened fire. 20mm cannon shells arced past Callaway's left wing, falling short by 200 yards. They were still too far out, still too fast, still climbing. Not yet. Callaway held the climb for another 5 seconds. Airspeed started to bleed off, 280 miles per hour, 270. The Zeros were closing faster now, sensing the kill. Range dropped to 700 yards, then 600. Now. Callaway chopped the left throttle to idle. The left engine's roar dropped to a whisper. He slammed the right throttle to full military power. The P-38 shuddered as asymmetric thrust tried to yaw the aircraft. He hauled back on the yoke with both hands, pulling hard, feeling the airframe groan under the G-load. The nose came up, kept coming up, rising toward vertical. The world spun, the horizon tilted. For 1 second, the P-38 hung in the air, balanced on the edge of a stall, rotating on its axis like a compass needle swinging to north. Then the nose fell through, and the aircraft reversed. What had been a chase was now a head-on engagement. The 2 Zeros were suddenly directly in front of him, less than 400 yards away, climbing and slow, their bellies exposed. Callaway centered the lead Zero in his gun sight and squeezed the trigger. 4 50 caliber machine guns and 1 20mm cannon opened up. The combined firepower was devastating. Tracers streamed across the gap. The Zero flew straight into the stream of fire. Rounds punched through its engine cowling, tore through its fuel tanks, shredded its airframe. The Zero exploded. Pieces of wing and fuselage spun away. The fireball rolled upward, expanding, trailing black smoke. The second Zero pilot reacted instantly, yanking his stick hard left, trying to break away, but he was too slow, too close, too committed. Callaway swung his nose to follow, leading the target, firing again. The Zero rolled inverted and tried to dive. Callaway's cannon shells caught it in the wing root. The wing folded. The Zero tumbled,
spinning wildly, falling toward the jungle below. From first shot to second kill, 11 seconds. Calloway rolled level, scanned the sky, confirmed no more threats, then turned back toward the formation. His hands were shaking. His heart was hammering so hard he could hear it over the engine noise. But it had worked. The tactic had worked. He landed back at Port Moresby at 9:27. Larson had made it back safely, his damaged engine shut down, his good engine running rough. The rest of the formation had lost one bomber and one fighter, but they'd driven off the remaining Zeros. Calloway didn't file a report on the maneuver. He didn't mention it to the squadron commander. He just marked 2 kills on his logbook and went to get coffee. But Larson talked. By that afternoon, half the squadron had heard about the crazy reversal Calloway had pulled off. By that evening, 3 other pilots asked him how he did it. By the next morning, the squadron commander called him into his office and demanded an explanation. Calloway explained. He showed his notebooks. He drew diagrams on a chalkboard, showing the altitude bands, the energy states, the timing of the maneuver. He explained why it worked at 12,000 feet, but would get you killed at 8,000. He explained how the P-38's twin engines made the reversal possible. The squadron commander stared at the diagrams for a long time. Then he said, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You deliberately slow down in front of enemy fighters? Only if they're committed, only if they think they're winning. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe, but it's better than getting killed doing nothing." If you want to see what happens when this tactic faces even worse odds, hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories like this. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to the story.
The squadron commander didn't ground Calloway, but he didn't authorize the tactic either. He just told Calloway to be careful and walked away. That was enough. Calloway flew 4 more missions in the next 6 days. He used the reversal tactic twice. 2 more Zeros went down. Word spread faster. Pilots from other squadrons started asking questions. A few started experimenting with the maneuver themselves. One lieutenant from the 9th Fighter Squadron crashed during practice, overstressed his airframe, and tore off his tail. He survived, but the incident brought unwanted attention from Group Command. On March 20th, a colonel from 5th Air Force Headquarters flew in to observe. He watched Calloway brief a mission, watched him take off, and listened to the radio traffic as Calloway used the reversal to kill a Zero that had been chasing a damaged P-40. The colonel didn't say much afterward, but 2 days later, a memo came down authorizing experimental high-altitude engagement tactics for evaluation. That was the green light. By the end of March, 12 pilots in the 39th Fighter Squadron were using variations of the reversal tactic. They started calling it the Calloway turn, or just the turn. It wasn't officially sanctioned doctrine, but it wasn't banned either. It existed in a gray area where results mattered more than regulations. The Japanese noticed. Their intelligence reports from captured pilots mentioned American fighters that reversed impossibly fast at high altitude and refused to turn fight. Some Zero pilots started refusing to chase P-38s above 12,000 feet. Others got more aggressive, trying to force engagements at lower altitudes where the Zero still had the advantage. On April 8, 1943, Calloway faced the worst odds of his career. It started at 7:42 in the morning. 12 P-38s were escorting 8 B-24 bombers to hit shipping at Rabaul. They were at 18,000 feet, 50 miles from target, when the formation was bounced by more than 30 Zeros. 3 full Chutai, coordinated, experienced pilots attacking from multiple directions at once. The formation disintegrated in seconds. The bombers dove for the deck, scattering. The fighters tried to maintain coverage, but there were too many Zeros. Within 2 minutes, 3 P-38s were shot down. 2 more were damaged and running for home.
That left 7 P-38s against 30 plus Zeros. Calloway and his wingman, a captain named Roy Fletcher, were separated from the main group. 5 Zeros latched onto them, coming in from above and behind, trying to force them into a descending turn fight. Fletcher wanted to dive and run. Calloway said no. He told Fletcher to climb, full throttle, heading northeast, away from the bombers, away from the fight. Make the Zeros commit. Fletcher thought Calloway had lost his mind, but he followed orders. Both P-38s climbed hard, pushing through 19,000 feet, then 20,000. The 5 Zeros followed, confident, aggressive. 1 P-38 alone was an easy target. 2 P-38s running together were just twice as easy. At 21,000 feet, Calloway told Fletcher to break left on his signal and dive away hard. Don't look back, just dive and get out. What about you? Fletcher asked. I'll be right behind you, Calloway lied. He waited until the Zeros were at 800 yards, closing fast, their engines straining at this altitude. Then he called the brake. Fletcher rolled left and dove. 3 of the Zeros followed him. That left 2 on Calloway, exactly what he wanted. He executed the reversal at 21,200 feet, cut left throttle, max right throttle, haul back. The P-38 rotated, slower than usual in the thin air, wallowing on the edge of a stall. For half a second, Calloway thought he'd misjudged it, that he'd gone too high, that the air was too thin to make it work. Then the nose fell through and the aircraft reversed. The 2 Zeros were there, right in front of him, climbing and slow, their propellers clawing at the thin air. Calloway opened fire. The lead Zero took hits across its engine and wing root. It rolled inverted and fell away, trailing smoke. The second Zero pilot tried to dive, but Calloway anticipated it, leading his shots down, raking the Zero's fuselage with cannon fire. The Zero's canopy shattered. The aircraft nosed over into a death spiral. 2 kills in 9 seconds. But Calloway wasn't done. He rolled left, dove, and went after the 3 Zeros chasing Fletcher. They were in a shallow dive, focused on Fletcher's fleeing P-38, not watching their 6. Calloway came in from above and behind, 3,000 feet of altitude advantage, 400 miles per hour of airspeed. He picked the trailing Zero and fired a 3-second burst. The Zero disintegrated. The other 2 Zeros saw him and split in opposite directions. Calloway didn't chase. He pulled up, scanned the sky, found Fletcher climbing back up to rejoin him. Both P-38s turned back toward the bombers. The main furball was still raging at 15,000 feet. 7 P-38s and 8 B-24s against 24 Zeros. The Americans were losing. 2 more bombers were smoking. Another P-38 was spinning toward the ocean. Calloway and Fletcher rejoined the fight from above, coming in at high speed, using altitude advantage to make slashing attacks. They didn't turn fight. They dove, fired, extended away, climbed back up, and dove again. Boom and zoom tactics, but faster, more aggressive, always maintaining energy and altitude. 3 more Zeros went down. The Japanese formation started to fragment. A few Zeros broke off, low on fuel or ammunition. Others tried to regroup, but the constant hit-and-run attacks from the P-38 kept them off balance. By 9:30, the Japanese broke contact and withdrew. 5 Zeros had been confirmed killed. 3 more were probably destroyed. The Americans had lost 4 P-38 and 3 B-24s, but 8 bombers made it to target and dropped their loads. When Calloway landed back at base, his crew chief counted 73 bullet holes in his aircraft. His left engine was running rough. His right aileron was barely attached. He'd been in the air for 2 hours and 7 minutes, most of it in combat. The intelligence officer asked him how many kills he'd claimed. Calloway said 5. The officer whistled. 5 in one mission? No, Calloway said. 5 today, 17 total. The Japanese had noticed too. Captured documents from May 1943 included specific warnings about American P-38 that refused normal engagement patterns and employed reversal tactics at high altitude. One report recommended avoiding stern chases above 4,000 meters against twin-engine fighters. Another suggested that the Americans had developed new pilot training emphasizing energy management over turn performance. They were right, but it wasn't new training. It was one pilot who refused to accept that doctrine was killing people.
By June 1943, the Calloway turn was being taught to new pilots arriving in the Pacific Theater. It wasn't official doctrine. 5th Air Force Headquarters still emphasized formation tactics and mutual support, but every instructor mentioned it. Every squadron commander knew about it. Every pilot with more than 10 missions had either used it or seen someone use it. The statistics were undeniable. In February 1943, before Calloway's tactics spread, P-38 squadrons in the Southwest Pacific had a kill ratio of roughly 1.2 to 1. For every Japanese aircraft destroyed, the Americans lost almost one fighter. By July 1943, that ratio had shifted to 3.7 to 1. For every P-38 lost, nearly 4 enemy aircraft went down. It wasn't just Calloway. Other pilots refined the tactic, adapted it to different aircraft, found new ways to use altitude and energy management to reverse impossible situations. But Calloway had been the first to see it, to test it, to prove it worked. He flew 68 combat missions between January and September 1943. He was officially credited with 23 enemy aircraft destroyed, 7 probably destroyed, and 11 damaged, but the real number was higher. In the chaos of multi-aircraft dogfights, not every kill could be confirmed. His crew chief estimated that Calloway had shot down at least 30 aircraft, and possibly as many as 35. More importantly, he'd trained 14 other pilots in the reversal tactic. Those pilots, in turn, trained others. By the end of 1943, variations of the Calloway turn were being used in every theater of the war. P-47 pilots in Europe adapted it for high-altitude bomber escort. P-51 pilots refined it for long-range fighter sweeps. Even some Navy pilots flying F-6F Hellcats used modified versions in the Pacific carrier battles. The official after-action reports credited improved pilot training and better aircraft for the improved kill ratios. They weren't wrong, but they were incomplete. The real change was tactical. Pilots stopped trying to outturn more maneuverable opponents and started using altitude, speed, and deception to dictate the terms of engagement. In September 1943, Calloway was rotated back to the States. He'd completed his tour and then some. He was offered a promotion and a training command position. He turned it down and requested assignment to a P-38 unit in Europe. The request was denied. He was too valuable as an instructor. He spent the next 18 months at Muroc Army Airfield in California, training new fighter pilots. He taught them energy management, altitude discipline, how to recognize when the enemy was committed, how to reverse an engagement. He taught them to think 3 steps ahead, just like his father had taught him on the ranch in Wyoming. He never used the term Calloway turn. He just called it common sense. The war ended in August 1945. Calloway was 25 years old. He'd been flying combat missions or training pilots for 4 years straight. He mustered out in October 1945 with the rank of Major, a Distinguished Flying Cross, a Silver Star, and an Air Medal with 6 oak leaf clusters. He went back to Wyoming. He married a girl he'd known in high school. He bought a small ranch outside Powell and raised cattle. He never talked much about the war. When people asked, he'd say he'd flown P-38s in the Pacific and leave it at that. Most people didn't push. In 1967, a military historian tracked him down for an oral history project. Calloway agreed to an interview. He talked for 3 hours, describing missions, tactics,
aircraft performance characteristics. He showed the historian his old notebooks, still in a box in his garage, filled with altitude tables, energy state calculations, sketches of engagement profiles. The historian asked him how many lives he thought the tactic had saved. Callaway thought about it for a while. Then he said, "I don't know, hundreds maybe. Every pilot who didn't get shot down in a turning fight they couldn't win. Every bomber crew that made it home because their escorts knew how to fight smart instead of fighting hard. You can't count that. You can only do your best and hope it matters." The historian wrote a monograph on the development of energy tactics in World War II. Callaway got 2 paragraphs. That was fine with him. James Callaway died in 1998 at the age of 78. He was buried in Powell, Wyoming, in a small cemetery overlooking the Shoshone River. His headstone listed his name, his dates, and 3 words: pilot, rancher, father. His P-38, the aircraft he'd flown for most of his combat tour, was scrapped after the war. No museum pieces, no preserved relics, just another Lightning among thousands, melted down and turned into civilian goods in the post-war economy. But in a climate-controlled archive at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama, there's a file labeled Tactical Development, Southwest Pacific Theater, 1942-1943. Inside that file are 2 spiral-bound notebooks, water-stained and faded, filled with handwritten notes in blue ink, altitude bands, energy states, timing windows, sketches of aircraft positions and engagement profiles, the foundational documents of modern energy-based fighter tactics. The kill-to-loss ratio for American fighters in the Pacific improved from 1.2 to 1 in early 1943 to nearly 5 to 1 by late 1944. That shift represented thousands of American pilots who made it home, thousands of families who didn't get a telegram from the War Department, thousands of lives extended by decades because someone figured out how to fight smarter. Not 17 kills, not 23, not even 35. Hundreds of lives saved by one man who refused to accept that impossible odds meant anything when you could think 3 steps ahead. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that ordinary people can change the course of history through simple determination, please hit that like button and subscribe. These stories matter. These men and women deserve to be remembered. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, and if anyone in your family served, we'd love to hear their story. Thank you for keeping their memory alive.